Welcome to the Backseat Leadership Podcast, a leadership conversation for those not in the driver's seat of their organizations. Each episode is designed to help backseat leaders answer questions, press into tensions, and flourish in the seat they find themselves in right now. And now, here are the hosts of the Backseat Leadership Podcast, Geoff Kokenauer and Brad Merchant.
This is episode 1 of the Backseat Leader Podcast. And I'm here today with my friend Geoff Kokenauer. Geoff, how are we?
I'm doing really great. Really great. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably like an 8.5.
Wow.
But with the hype, I'm probably like a 10.5. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm probably about a 7, but when you buy my lunch today, I'll probably be about 11.
Oh, I just love that
you.
I can make your life that much better.
Geoff, today we are having a conversation that's really launching off of our previous episode. So if our listeners have not listened to episode 0, our introduction episode talking about the vision of the podcast, you'll want to do that first.
Do that right now.
It'll give you a lot
Stop
of context.
this and go back and watch that.
That's right. Or listen to them
those.
both at the same
Can
time.
you do that? Yeah. Get 2 phones out.
Yeah, maybe not. But here's the heart of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's a conversation for leaders who don't find themselves in the driver's seat.
That's right.
Which is 90% of our population, because you know what we continue to find is that usually 90% of the books that are written on leadership are really for 1% of the population.
That's right.
And we wanted to have a conversation.
And they're really good books.
They're great books.
They're great resources.
Lots to learn from, but they're all written towards one audience, and that's those at the top of the food chain, top of the totem pole, and top of the organization and churches that they lead.
Yeah.
We want to start a conversation about topics for people who are like us, common people implementing someone else's vision, and how we can do that better.
And it's critical to keep this in mind too. We're not talking about this stuff to get you to the front seat. That's somebody else's podcast. That's somebody else's resource. And Lord willing, that's somebody else. That's his job to give you that seat. This is a conversation about the place that you're in the back seat.
How
do
to
you
flourish
leverage
where you're at.
That's exactly right.
That's right. So Geoff, today what we're going to talk about is something I'm really excited about, and the reason why we're talking about this first, before other things, this is most important, and that is the topic of leading yourself well. So let me just start with this blanket question.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Like, what does it really mean to lead yourself well?
You know, I think it's really, really important. I've read a couple different books. One of the books I would recommend, we'll put this in the show notes, Terry Linhart wrote a book called The Self-Aware Leader, and he writes it specifically to a lot of people who are in their late 20s, early 30s, who are in leadership or really trying to figure out their life. And one of the things that he kind of reemphasizes multiple times throughout the book is having an understanding of who you are and the trajectory that you have been set on. And so to answer your question, I think it's critical to have a vision and set a direction. Those are the 2 main points here. So let me flesh it out a little bit. When it means to have a vision for yourself is understanding your trajectory and your mission in life, right? Because here's the thing, and John Maxwell talks about the 5 levels of leadership, and he talks about how the lowest level is positional leadership, that you are a position, because he recognizes as part of his, I think it's one of his irrefutable laws of leadership, that you got to value other people. Like, you have to value people, not stuff. And so having a trajectory for your life as a person is critical. And I think the way this fleshes out is by creating almost like a vision statement or a mission statement for yourself. What are the things that you want to be about? Who do you want to be? Who are you? And those are 3 huge questions that take some time and probably some help to answer. But the moment you have some sort of trajectory statement or a vision statement for your life, you know what fits you and what doesn't fit you. You know what things you're going to step into leadership and what things you're not. We'll talk about this in other episodes about saying your best yes as a person in the back seat. But oftentimes it can feel like that. And what's ironic about that is when we're in the back seat, oftentimes, man, we want to have visions for where we're supposed to go. Person in the driver's seat, can you please figure out what in the world you want me to do? What is the organization supposed to be about? It's really ironic how many backseat leaders have never thought about what does it mean to have a vision for their life, yet they expect their leaders and their organization to have that that vision. And so I think that's critical. Set a vision for yourself, and then have a direction. I love what Andy Stanley, the principle of the path, direction, not intention, determines your destination. I wish I could have come up with that because I love it. I think it's great. Once you have that vision statement, you know where you want to end up. Now you got to make some decisions to get yourself there directionally, right? So if you want to be more intentional with the people who you're leading, then set up more one-on-ones and make that a part of your that's part of your vision. Make that a part of your everyday. Yeah. We'll talk about a little about Scorecard, but I think that's huge is getting yourself a direction and then going in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something if we take a step back, what does it mean to lead yourself well? It means the ordinary, mundane, everydayness of a leader's life really matters. I love this quote. Forget where I get this, but I found it somewhere, found it years ago, tucked it away, and I just love it. So I'm going to attribute it to you. This is what Geoff Kokenauer said.
I love getting attributed with things maybe I said.
Well, you don't know what I'm about to say, so this is a great
maybe
moment.
I don't.
Here's the quote. I love it. Nothing so conclusively proves a man's ability to lead others. Now, what's he about to say? As what he does on a day-to-day basis to lead himself.
Well, that's way too good for me to have ever said it. But that's really
so I said
good.
it. I'll just take credit.
Say it again.
I said it. Nothing so conclusively proves a man's ability to lead others as what he does on a day-to-day basis to lead himself. I really love that. It means
so good.
All the little things you do
every
single day impact all of your life.
Yeah.
All of your life. And there's a book that I'm having some guys at our church read. It's called Liturgy of the Ordinary. And in the book, Tish Warren talks about how every day is a liturgy. It's like an order of service. For those of you that are working in the church, you know that there are people in your church that put together a order of service. That is a type of liturgy.
Oh, yeah.
And for all of us, we all have a liturgy to our day. It's the little things that we do every day that are forming us to be the people that one day we will become. And I think if you want to think well about leading yourself well, you need to not examine maybe the big parts of your life, but the little ones.
Yeah.
What are the little things I'm doing every day that are forming me, forming my habits, my mind, my heart?
And that's so good because I think oftentimes, even when I say have a vision and a direction, we think these are just massive things. I gotta reconfigure my schedule. I gotta reconfigure the disciplines in my life, and that may be true. But it also may be just evaluating what are the little things that you're doing that are sideways energy, that's not leading you in that trajectory you want to go. And not because again, this conversation that we're having is about flourishing in that backseat leadership position. It's not about just getting to the next position, right? Which is closer to the driver's seat. And I think that's critical to remember when you talk about all of the mundane little things that are going on in your life. And are those leading to the place that you want to become? Because they're either getting you there or they're pulling you away from it.
Totally, absolutely.
It's either getting you down the road to where you want to be, or it's stopping you in your tracks or taking you down a path you don't want to go.
That's right.
I don't think we can understate that reality.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really good.
That's right. Most leadership disasters don't happen by earthquakes, but erosion. It's little negative things that are done every single day that one day will bring you off the cliff.
Yeah.
It's not these big catastrophic things. Little steps turn into big ones, right?
Well, and that's the process of getting to the point of exhaustion where you can't lead at all, right?
Yeah, that's right.
If you're constantly saying yes, you're constantly doing everything that comes your way, and you don't have an idea of who you want to be, right? Because if all I do as a backseat leader, it's often easy to just say yes to whatever the driver says to do, right?
Yep.
Now, sometimes we have drivers there's drivers all over the world who, in good faith, maybe want to give you the opportunity to lead however you want, and they don't tell you exactly what to do, and that's a maddening thing of itself.
That's right.
But it can be easy to just do whatever they tell you to do, and again, they're trying to accomplish something, right?
Yep,
Your drivers, I think it's easy in an unhealthy backseat leadership situation. We just said, okay, come up with a vision for your life and have a direction for it. If I do that and I have an unhealthy situation for myself, and the driver doesn't help me get there, I'm going to get frustrated because I'm unhealthy. The reality is that our drivers often are in good faith. More often than they're not. More often than they're not, they're trying to do something good. And so the moment that they'd say, hey, go do this, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do this, if you haven't found what your direction is, you're just going to start doing everything and you're going to burn out.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're not going to be a leader at all. You're going to be, I don't even know what you're going to be.
Yeah, on the side of the road, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Here's this kind of jumps off of that statement. Here's a good question. Geoff, how do you know? Like, how do I know if I'm healthy? Like, how do I know that?
Yeah, and I think we want to, like you said, emphasized it, we want to know. Like, it doesn't want to be a question. I'm a big sports guy. I mean, honestly, if curling was on, I would watch curling. I don't know the slightest thing. If badminton, I probably wouldn't watch badminton.
No, you wouldn't.
But I mean, I can sit there Sunday afternoons, and chill and watch whatever's on. Thank the Lord, it's usually football. But even football, baseball, name a sport, they have a scorecard that tells them if they're succeeding or failing. And I think that's important for a leader. You've got to have, so you got this vision and direction you've set now. You're starting to look at the little things that are leading you in one direction or the other. You got to have a scorecard that's going to help you get down that road. And I think it's easy for us to say we have a scorecard so we know that we're successful. I think it's more important for us to have a scorecard so we know that when we're not. I think of the story that Alan Mulally told at Leadership Summit a few years ago. Alan Mulally was heavy into Boeing for a long time. Then Ford hires him as their CEO, and he comes in and Ford's not doing so well. And he comes up with these questions that he wants to ask as like, here's the 4 or 5 major things that we've got to accomplish. Yeah. And for the longest time, for a few months, every department was answering every question in the green, yet they were still tanking. They were still going downhill. And it wasn't until one of the departments answered in the negative and said, we're not succeeding in this way, that they actually started to dig themselves out because they got honest about the ways that they weren't going down the road in the right way. Sometimes the scorecard tells us how we're being successful. Oftentimes the best scorecards tell us where we're weak and where we need to develop. Yeah. And I think what gets evaluated gets better. And so in this case, a scorecard and a conversation where we move down the road by saying, here's what I'm not doing well. Here's what I need to work on. And here's the thing. It's really easy, I think, to say, okay, I'm not doing this well, I have to fix it right now. It probably needs to be fixed. But I'm a critical mind, so I can go through and well, here's where I suck today. And tomorrow I'll go have a new thing, right? The point is that this is a long-term conversation. And so for the season that you're in, what do you need to be successful at and what do you need to work on? Because, the reality is look at, again, sports. The NBA teams know where they need to be at certain points in the season to be successful and get to where they want to be. Yep. You got to know that too. And you do that by having a scorecard that says, okay, if I want, again, go back to the example of the first point. If I want to be better with the people who I'm leading, the people I'm around, and I need to have more conversations with them, I want to have more one-on-ones with them, look at your calendar and say, okay, here's how I'm not having one-on-ones with the people I want to have one-on-ones with, and adjust, right?
That's right.
Because that's what a scorecard does. It helps you adjust properly. So I think that's really critical. That's where I come from.
Yeah.
What do you think?
One of the questions I like to ask myself, if I want to evaluate, am I healthy? Am I a healthy leader? Is this question. What do I do when I'm given authority? What do I do when I'm given authority? What do I do when I am given power, right? Yeah. Because what you do with that says a lot about who you are, right? I like to think of it this way, that what I find again and again, and Geoff, you know this to be true, is that the best leaders I've ever served under don't abuse authority, they distribute it.
That's great.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
When you abuse authority...
Wait, that's a driver's seat. That's a good backseat leader. That's right. Because all of us have authority, even if it's not displayed on the org chart. Yep. All of us have authority. We all have power. If people listen to you, you have authority. Yep. You have power. And how you use that is showing you the state of your own heart, right? The best leaders lead like they're not in charge, even when they are. I love that. That's great.
I love that. The best leaders lead like they're not in charge, even when they are. We know that to be true. Yeah. That the people that we really want to run through a brick wall for are the people who don't constantly remind you of their title and where they stand in the org chart and where you don't stand, consequently, in the org chart. Instead, they're the people who say, you know what? This whole thing is bigger than me. The whole vision of our organization, of our church, is bigger than me, and I want to help you win. Yeah. They're never going to lord it over you, right? And so I like to ask myself that question, what do I do with authority? That's a big one. The other thing that I find to be true is if my home life is chaotic, if the roof is caving in, my leadership can be awesome, but I'm failing at life.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because what we like to do, we like to take our life in buckets, right? We like to say, I have my 40-hour-a-week job over here where I'm leading. I have my home life. I have my personal life. That's not how it works. It's all encompassing. Mm-hmm. We have one life. We're held accountable, not for different buckets, but for life, right? In one commentator, I remember reading years back, we were, as a church, talking about qualifications for elders and deacons, and I found this quote to be really insightful. The author said, Today churches look at resumes and never examine the home, but in the New Testament church, a man's home was his resume.
Yeah.
Wow, that's for many of us indicting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what am I doing at home? How am I leading at home? Because if I'm failing at home, I'm failing everywhere else, right? Yeah. So those are two questions I think that are really helpful to ask. They're just good diagnostic tests. What do I do when I'm given authority, and what's my home life look like?
I love that phrase of today's churches look at resumes and never examine the home. And in the New Testament church, that's the home was a resume.
That's right, yeah.
I think it's easy to hear that and say, okay, well, that's church leadership. But let's be honest, as we look at our culture and our society today, as we look at leadership across the board, so many people are failing in marriages, failing in their families because they're pushing themselves so hard and they haven't put in boundaries. They haven't put in expectations. They haven't put in a scorecard that helps them have margin to be at their kids' stuff, to be at to spend a date night with their wife. Listen, I think it's super important for church leaders to make sure their homes are well kept.
Yeah.
I think we're commanded to do that. I don't think it's a choice for us. I don't think it's a choice for other leaders either. And I think I watch so many people listen to folks who say, stretch yourself all the way. And we'll talk about balance and kind of the myth of balance in a couple episodes later. But the idea that you don't even prioritize that. Like, I'm reading a book by Doug Fields, and Doug is a great writer, a ministry guy, a leader, a good friend. And he talks about how you can't replace the father of your kids. You can't replace the husband to your wife. But you can replace the CEO of the organization. You can replace the VP of finance. Those people change all of the time. Your role is replaceable.
Yeah.
But your position in your family and your position in your marriage is not replaceable.
Yeah, I think the way I heard Andy Stanley say it one time, he said, don't give up what's unique to you.
That's great.
For what someone else one day will do.
That's so good.
Right? Because at the end of the day, Geoff, your church can get another pastor of students.
That's right.
But your wife can't get another Geoff.
No, she can't.
Right? And so
She may want to sometimes.
Yeah, she probably does, especially Sunday afternoons when you're watching curling. I think the application here for listeners is if you are spending all of your time thinking about being an awesome leader at your job, but you don't give 2 seconds of thought of how am I leading myself in my home, you're failing as a leader, right? Yeah. So here's the third question, and this is really getting boots on the ground here. What are some things you need to do to get healthy? Okay, so what are some things you actually need to do to get this vision of health we've set forth? How do you maintain that health, grow in your leadership, all personally? How do you do that? Yeah.
Like I said, I think what gets evaluated gets better. I think Andy Stanley has said that before. I'm quoting a lot of people today, Clay Scroggins, all these guys.
Yeah.
I think it's to take a hard look at your life and ask the question, where am I succeeding and where am I failing? And I think you got to start personally before you get to the professional stuff. And here's why. Again, you are a person. And as much as your job says you're a position, as much as your role says that you have a job description, you are a human being created in the image of God. And it is super critical that you maintain the flourishing of that before you start to say, how do I flourish as a professional? Now, some of you are going, yeah, but my professional life and my personal life are so intertwined. I'm a youth pastor. I'm on call all the time. Like, kids can call me. I may or may not answer. At one point in my life, when I was single, I would answer all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, yeah, let's go. Let's go. What's going on? Yeah, let's go do that. Oh, we're going to play basketball? Let's go do that. I mean, I didn't play it well, but I tried. And you've got to maintain different boundaries as your personal life changes, because if your personal life isn't flourishing, who cares about your professional life? It's not even going to be that successful. It's going to be successful for a short amount of time. As in comparison to if your personal life is well ordered, if you are flourishing personally, you will flourish professionally, because you'll know where you're supposed to go and you'll know how to get there, and it'll be valuable to you that you get those things done in a positive way. And so I think that's really critical. Answer the question, how are you not flourishing personally?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, just getting really into the granular level of this question, I like to think of 3 arenas for me. So I like to think about how am I doing physically? Okay, how am I doing physically? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing spiritually? Let me break that down a little bit. Physically, do I have a regular habit of exercising, of being active? Because all of that, there's a ton of studies out there that show that if you're not doing that, it actually changes the way you think. So it's impacting every area of your life. So even as minute as, hey, I'm going to take every day 20 minutes. The least I'm going to do is walk. I'm going to walk for 20 minutes. And that's a win for me. There's some days where I'm like, man, I am just so tired, but I think I got to get that 20-minute walk in. And it helps. It really does. So that's physically. The other one spiritually is, for me, as a Christian, am I cultivating a fresh love for God every day? And how do I do that? By reading the book, by reading the Bible. Now, this doesn't mean I'm a high achiever. Geoff, you're a high achiever. People that are listening to this, I'm assuming they're high achievers. What we want to do, especially as you listen to this is the beginning of February. We're only a month out from your New Year's resolutions.
Right.
Maybe you've already thrown them in the trash. But for many Christians, they say, I'm going to read the Bible like 600 times this year, right? I have all these reading plans I'm going to do. I have all these fat books I want to get through. Yeah.
They have as many reading plans as they do commitments to reading the Bible.
Literally.
Me too.
And the truth is, you end up dropping off in Genesis by the second week of January.
Yeah.
You're biting off more than you can chew, right?
Yeah.
And I find for myself, it's just a little bit of reading and a lot of reflection that goes a long way. It's looking at a verse of Scripture, asking myself, what does this tell me about God? And then how is this now calling me to live in response to who God is?
Right.
And reflecting on that all day does wonders.
And that's not just for pastors.
That's right.
That's for your believer.
Even more so if you are in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
You really need to be doing that. So I asked myself physically, spiritually, and then emotionally, are there any wrongs that I've done to people that either I live with or I work with that I need to make right?
That's good.
Asking myself that question. Because here's the thing. What we all tend to do is assume the worst about others, but the best of ourselves, right? And so what we tend to do is we tend to say, we tend to say, I'm an easy person to work with and live with. It's these other people, if they get their acts together, we wouldn't have conflict. No, the reality is you are really messed up, more than you even know. The Bible says you are so messed up, you don't even know how messed up you are. Only God does. And so what that tells me is that I could accidentally have a wrong between me and someone else that I caused and might be blind to. I need to think about that. Yeah. The second thing is, are there people that I need to forgive, but I just keep playing a false narrative in my head every time I see them? Yeah. I keep repeating, like a rerun of an episode of Friends. We keep playing again and again and again when we need to just turn it off forever. Thank you, Netflix.
But we're going to miss it.
No, we're not.
I won't.
And forgive those people once and for all. Am I doing that? Because all of these areas affect all of life and all of leadership, right? I mean, don't you find that to be true, Joe?
Yeah, and what's crazy is like you're outlaying these things, and I'm going, we've talked about that, and we've talked about that, and we've talked about that.
That's right.
And the crazy part, the hardest part about this is those are hard conversations.
Yep.
Especially when you start to realize that maybe you're not to the level you want to be at, that you're actually struggling in this area. And probably the hardest one is that emotional, relational one, because all of a sudden there's work to do. And it's not just work to do in prayer. It's not just work to do it's work with a person. It's getting humble. It's getting to realize, I'm not doing so great, and I want to do great.
Yeah.
I think that's critical.
Yeah,
that's really,
right.
really good.
That's right.
Brad, in every episode, we want to do the one thing, and the one thing out of this conversation is on you today. So congratulations for that. I think you've done both of them so far.
I have.
Well,
wow.
It's just, I don't like doing
That's
things.
varsity level stuff.
I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram. I'm not going to get vulnerable. So that's just, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not kidding
You'll
about the
run
type
me
8.
over.
But
That's what you do.
I will. But you're a 3, so you'll make goals that get out of the way. So we'll talk about that some other time.
Yes, we will.
That's somewhere episode 12 or something. But anyway, one thing right now, one thing you're learning right now, and it's been very good for you.
Yeah, so one thing I'm learning, I'm actually going to reach back into history books and quote a Puritan. Okay, this might be the only time we do this on this podcast, but here it is.
I mean, it's definitely going to happen for me.
It's probably going to happen every episode for me, let's be honest. Jeremiah Burroughs, in his book, The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment, which is just an amazing little book, he said this. He said, "You can't pour water into a shaking glass."
Ooh.
What does he mean by that? It means that every day, if you're a child of God, God wants to pour out wisdom and blessing into your life. But if your life is shaking with anxiety and stress, He can't. Now, what does that mean? There's an old saying that they tell the Navy SEALs when they're going through training, and it's this, and I think about it all the time. They say, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. We tend to think in the opposite.
Yeah.
If I have a lot to do today, I run out of the door in a hectic mess, typing away at my computer, talking to people, rushing from meeting to meeting. But what the Navy SEALs are taught, actually, no, if you want to accomplish this mission, move slow. Because with slowness, there's precision. And when you're slow, you're smooth. And when you're smooth, you're actually fast.
Wow.
And so the one thing I'm learning is that in my day-to-day life, am I just running in a hectic, chaotic blur from one thing to the next? Or am I slowly having communion with God in everything that I'm doing? And at the end of the day, you know what I'm finding? Is that the slower I am with God, actually the more productive I become at the end of the day. It's amazing. So that's something that I'm learning, reaching back to the history books, Jeremiah Burroughs, Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. There's like he was tweetable before you could be tweetable. It's unbelievable.
We'll put it in the show notes and make sure you can grab your copy today.
That's right.
From the Brad Merchant blog.
Yeah, that's right.
Get that right there. That's really good, though, and really helpful in a culture and a time when leaders are pushed to work faster, harder.
Right. That's right.
And especially if you're in the backseat leadership situation where you're really asking the question, how much more can I take on and how much more can I get done? That's really, really good and something we can all for sure learn from. The team, the community
Yes.
of the Backseat Leadership Podcast can grasp and hold on to and become better leaders. It's really, really good.
Geoff, this has been a great conversation.
It has.
On leading well.
Yeah.
Why don't you leave our listeners with maybe a last word of advice? What do you want our listeners to take away from this conversation on leading yourself well?
I think it's easy to go through a conversation like this if you do implement some of these steps and to start to kind of beat yourself up. And I think the critical cog here to remember is that you are made in the image of God, that God has created you, and He's not just created you for an accident. He's created you for a specific purpose, and He's going to show it to you. And I think it's really easy to go, well, I work in the marketplace, and this isn't what God created me for. Well, sometimes we do things we have to do in order to do things we want to do, the things that God wants us to do. And so, take that on and realize that the moment you start to get a fuller picture of what your life looks like, you're going to start to get a better picture of what your leadership is supposed to look like in professionally and personally. And I think that's super critical. And don't beat yourself up when you realize that perhaps I'm not at the level I want to be. But this is a long game. This is a long game. This is a long conversation that takes time and effort. And so give yourself some grace.
Yep, that's a good word. Geoff, thanks for the conversation. This has been episode 1 of the Backseat Leader Podcast.
What can our followers do? Our people who are listening
Geoff,
to tell people.
Geoff, they can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like our Facebook page.
That's right.
What is our
at Backseat Leader?
What am I looking for?
Is our username. And then we've got a website that you can get all the show notes.
www.backseatleader.com.
There you go.
Find us there. Follow us. Tell your friends. Subscribe for future episodes.
Smash that subscribe button so you get all of these podcasts every other week, and you can be a part of the conversation.
Do that. We'll see you next time.
See ya.